And Kamala Harris, the establishment is now saying that she should not run. Everybody knows she's a goofball. Sorry. Here she is celebrating hip hop. Hip hop has done a lot of damage to America, especially American youth, people of color, people not of color, all kinds of people harmed by the message of hip hop. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yes, if we just waited long enough, he was about to quote Bill Cosby for sure. That was Greg Kelly on Newsmax talking about Kamala Harris enjoying hip hop and how bad hip hop is. No one's really sure where he was going with that entire thing, but what he was mentioning up top, which was Democrats themselves are having some doubts as to whether Kamala Harris is the best pick for President Joe Biden this second time around. And that is actually clear. There was an op-ed in the Washington Post that even said that Joe Biden himself shouldn't be running, and that Kamala Harris is not necessarily a good pick. But before we get to that, I just like how horribly crass the hip hop for the youth, especially youth of color. We know what you're talking about, dude. And just in case anyone needs a reminder, Trump embraces hip hop artists and rappers as long as they love him. Remember how he granted clemency to Lil Wayne, Kodak Black in the final flurry of presidential power? I'm sure, I don't know who was pulling the strings, but remember then he tried to threaten a trade war with Sweden over A$AP Rocky's arrest in 2019. And then finally, not as famous, but everyone must remember, Forgiato Blow. Don't you know good old Forgiato over there, the guy with I think a Guess Who game of a beard going on. He had, this was his collab over at Real America with Dan, Forgiato Blow and Dan Ball. There is a music video we will not subject you to. But guys, this is a fun way to get into a real substantive conversation about Kamala Harris. Before we do, it is still important to remember that even though people have doubts and her popularity is waning, Kamala Harris is a Black woman who is vice president and is now still and will continue to be facing racist attacks on her, beyond her politics. And you had one example right there.
Yeah, it's super frustrating because I'm not a huge fan of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, especially in running this particular race, which we need to win, and I'm not sure they're best positioned to win. But idiots like Greg Kelly make my job much harder because the minute you do a nonsense, insane attack like this, everybody rallies around the flag, right? On the Democratic side, and they want to protect her. Now it's super understandable, right? What is that? I mean, that's so Bill O'Reilly. I mean, it's like a couple of decades old to be like, oh, hip hop is corrupting the youth. It's it's these people of color. I don't know what they're up to with their newfangled music. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's both incredibly dorky and obviously racist. But my favorite part of it was, and people not of color.
Not all hip hop, but a lot. There was a lot of hedging there.
Yeah, it was really an opportunity, I think, to exploit a piece of video on Kamala Harris, and those moments that Kamala Harris has that are less than flattering, but they're just human moments. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with what she was doing, but they can play moments like that with Kamala Harris just to try to dirty her up, since she is someone who is losing altitude politically. Friend.
Yeah, and I just one last quick thing about that. There's plenty of unflattering video on Kamala Harris, especially when she gives those repetitive answers, the weird laughing, etc. But that wasn't one of them. That was actually the most complimentary video of Kamala Harris I've ever seen. That was pretty good dancing.
Sure.
I was actually surprised by how good the dancing was.
But to that Newsmax audience or whoever Greg Kelly's on, I mean, I think that's viewed as, they're not evaluating that hip hop move in the same way you are, Cenk.
Yeah, that's very fair, Mark. That's very fair.
And
by the way, of all the different examples, I'll add one more. Kanye West with Donald Trump.
Oh, right.
And now all of a sudden you guys don't like hip hop? Please.
No, of course, yeah. Well, so let's get into the actual substance here, because yes, it seems that there has not only been questions as to whether Joe Biden should be the presidential nominee for Democrats going into 2024, but whether Vice President Kamala Harris should continue to be his running mate. Now, we're gonna look at a couple of moments this week and see what you guys think. Is there shade being thrown at Vice President Harris here? Nancy Pelosi spoke, and she was basically talking about whether or not that Kamala Harris should be Joe Biden's running mate, and she had a very specific, direct answer, which was, well, Joe Biden chooses her. It's Joe Biden's choice. Was it an endorsement? I don't know. Take a look.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters. And by the way,
you think so?
She's very politically astute. I don't think people give her enough credit. She's, of course, values-based, consistent with the president's values and the rest. And people don't understand, she's politically astute. Why would she be vice president if she were not? But when she was running for Attorney General in California, she had 6% in the polls, 6% in the polls. And she politically astutely made her case about why she would be good, did her politics, and became Attorney General. So people shouldn't underestimate what Kamala Harris brings to the table.
But do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the vice president of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the vice president. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
Okay, look, I don't always support everything Nancy Pelosi says, but I guess I don't read shade here. I read a pretty strong defense. Like, yeah, she's working things politically for herself and she's his pick. Now, maybe she weaseled out of that question, but I think ultimately, and we'll get to what Representative Jamie Raskin had to say, ultimately, yeah, she's his pick and that's the pick. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Is this not a full-throated enough endorsement of the vice presidential running mate?
Yeah, look, I'm curious what Mark thinks too, because I'm surprised, Franny, at your opinion on that. No, she clearly dodged the question, in my opinion.
Really? Okay.
Like massively dodged the question twice. And so she can say she's politically astute and she's giving her comments. She's not gonna insult the Democratic vice president, right? Especially as they're going into an election. But normally what somebody like Nancy Pelosi would do would be, Kamala Harris is one of the best vice presidents we've ever had. What do you mean? Of course I think she should run with the president. I find the question offensive. Instead, she didn't even answer it. Wow, no, my read of that was they have for whatever reason that we are not perfectly privy to, they have lost all confidence in Kamala Harris.
It was interesting, I completely agree with Cenk. It was definitely shade. It's so easy to start whatever other stuff she was saying with the word yes. I support her, I think she's the best. You may not, I don't clearly think that she does, but at least at this juncture, normally you would offer a full-throated support of Kamala Harris, and then you would provide those, whatever she was saying beyond it, talking about her political acumen and all the rest. But then Cenk said something just a moment ago that's really interesting to me, which is, we don't know why. And that's a great question. I mean, we know that she's taken on water politically and she's never really been a great asset politically to the president. But and so when you look at her as a potential candidate or running mate, you see her political liabilities. But we don't really know why Nancy Pelosi wouldn't step up and just say the word yes. You can always back and fill and go back on it. But for some reason she didn't. It was definitely shade, Franny, to me.
Yeah, I think the part of it that threw the most shade was like, that's the job of the vice president. You don't do that much. Like, ooh.
Yeah,
well, that was definitely
Even
weak.
if that is
that
was the line.
No, I'm absolutely sure of it now. Like, it's Joe Biden's pick. Is saying it's not my pick. It's Joe Biden's pick. If you told me, does Mark wear that TYT hat really well? I wouldn't say, well, Mark wore a hat really well back in 1987, and it was like a nice fedora. And look, it's not my job to pick Mark's hat. It's someone else's job to pick Mark's hat. No, the answer is goddamn right he does. He looks beautiful with that hat on. Okay, and especially with the establishment, they always circle the wagons for their own. So they're not circling the wagons here. That is interesting. There's one possibility Michael Schur mentioned to us in the production meeting. He's like, look, California politics is a little bit different. There's the Gavin Newsom camp and there's the Kamala Harris camp, and this is Nancy Pelosi, also from California, obviously, partly being more disposed to the Gavin Newsom camp than the Kamala Harris camp. But that is splitting hairs as we're heading into a presidential election where she would be the vice presidential choice. I'm still pretty stunned by it. And that doesn't explain Jamie Raskin, which is what Franny's about to tell you.
Yeah, let's go to that. In terms of someone who wasn't able to answer and give just a direct yes or no, here's Representative Raskin also being asked by CNN. It seems like CNN is kind of on this tip lately, whether they think that Kamala Harris is the best running mate for Joe Biden in the election. Take a look.
Do you think Vice President Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden? And what do you make of Speaker Pelosi's answer there?
I mean, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with that answer. Obviously, President Biden, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, for that matter, all of us have been laboring under just a deluge of propaganda, disinformation, and criticism by the MAGA right. This is a rule or ruin faction, which takes the position that if they're not going to be able to control the direction of government, they are going to throw grease in the gears to try to shut everything down. And what we're all dealing with right now is this impending September 30th deadline, because the MAGA right wants to shut down the government.
You are doing what Speaker Pelosi did, which is not answering the question. Do you think Kamala Harris is the best running mate for President Biden?
Is it? Well, obviously she gave the right answer. That's President Biden's choice. And I think she's an excellent running mate for President Biden.
For him, that wouldn't be my choice.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like when you're giving advice, look, that's her boyfriend and I support her. And look, they're getting married and I support her.
That's a great analogy. Perfect analogy. Look, I got my issues with Jake Tapper, but that was a very fair follow-up question. Nice follow-up question, right? And because he clearly didn't answer. And Jamie Raskin is not establishment, but he's in Washington and he's a big and important part of the Democratic Party now, right? And so the Democratic Party never hangs out their own to dry like this unless they're progressives. So no, that's why I'm saying the fumbling and bumbling that Kamala Harris has done so far while as vice president, I don't like it. But it doesn't merit this kind of backing away. It seems like they know something we don't know, and it's getting weird now.
Again, I really counsel people to remember what Cenk just said. There is something going on with Kamala Harris. It was so easy just to answer in the affirmative if you're Jamie Raskin. I mean, he's super articulate, terrific, like almost a ninja when it comes to describing what's going on with the GOP and throwing grease in the gears and all that stuff. But it would have been so easy just to front with the yes, it's the president's choice and I support it 100%. Instead, he rides the fence, and I don't understand why, since you can so easily, especially in Washington, reverse your position. So it's something, as Cenk says, there's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but these are signals of some kind of something going on with the solidarity behind Kamala Harris.
Look, I think that we wouldn't be making anything of this were Biden's age not being called into question. May I remind everyone, by the same centrists who told us we should vote for him and that he would be the best pick. Anyway, now they're all backing away from him. But I do think because of that, because I feel like usually, look, when Obama went into his second term, people weren't like, well, what about that Joe Biden? How about how quickly he ate those pancakes at the pancake breakfast? No, nobody was worried about Joe Biden. People are concerned about who is the successor to the presidency, right? And they're worried about, Kamala Harris is, I guess maybe she didn't eat enough pancakes at the breakfast. Who knows? I feel like we're casting extra scrutiny because of the scrutiny that is already being thrown on Joe Biden himself, the ways that he said he was gonna be a transitional candidate. I again have my own personal thoughts on why the hell would they switch like courses now? This guy actually beat Donald Trump. But I absolutely think that Kamala Harris is not necessarily, look, if he were to die in office, heaven forbid, would I think that Kamala Harris would be a good person to step up? No.
I think she doesn't have like 10-foot poll marks all over her from the Democrats, but 5-foot poll marks. They're sort of supporting her in all of these different situations, but the reality is, if you look at the party, they really are not there full-throatedly in any kind of way, as we've just seen.
Yeah, so I agree with Franny that it's more stark because we're worried about Biden, which makes us more worried about Kamala. I don't agree with Franny that he's a good enough candidate. I think he's in a lot of trouble on tyt.com/dropout. And we need to get real candidates. All you need is someone who could breathe and walk at the same time and put together 2 sentences, and you could beat Donald Trump. He's very unpopular. He's 60% of the country basically hates him, but Biden is now losing to him. This is a bad, bad ticket. And there's something wrong with Kamala Harris that the Democratic Party is not telling us, because I've never seen them do that. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.